I thought it would be a really cool idea to make a video for you guys about my birthing experiences. Look at him. So I did have one all-natural birth, which was Xavier. No epidural, no pain medication. He was all natural. And I also had Isaiah that I did have epidural. So with Isaiah, I had him with epidural. So let me tell you guys what my experience was with both, and what I think is best, and the pros and cons to both experiences. Let me start with Isaiah since he's oldest. Well, I had Isaiah, I was 20. I was 20 years old when he was born. So, so my water broke with him at about, he was actually 3 weeks early. So my water broke 3 weeks early, and I went to the doctors not knowing if it was my water. It was my first baby. I had no clue what was going on. So yeah, I get there and it was my water. So immediately I wasn't feeling a thing. The doctor checked me. She said I was 2-4. So I was like, oh great, that's wonderful. So she told me that at 4 I'm allowed to get an epidural, but I still wasn't feeling anything. She gave me something to clean my system out. As soon as I drank that, maybe like 30 minutes later, I started getting the worst, I mean horrible pains. So after that, I told her that I wanted the epidural. So I got it almost immediately. I probably felt contractions not even half hour. And so yeah, maybe I think it was 6 or 7 hours later, Isaiah was born. He weighed 8 pounds 16 ounces or 15 ounces. He was exactly 9 pounds. So he was really big. Hey, calm down. Are you gonna be a fighter?
Why?
So Isaiah was a really big baby. So I did tear with him. So after I thought, oh, thank God. I could imagine I wouldn't have got epidural. I would have felt all that. He was huge. I would have tore. I would have been horrible. The downside to epidural, in my opinion, was I couldn't walk. I was in a lot of pain down. I was numb for after hours. I had to have an IV in after until I was able to pee on my own. Then they took out the IV. I had to have a catheter. I didn't like none of that. That's what I didn't like with Isaiah. I mean, it was a plus for 6 or 7 hours. I didn't feel a thing. I also pushed for 2 hours with Isaiah. Look at him. He's looking at himself and he's like so happy.
Hi, Mom.
I pushed.
Mom.
Hi.
I've my picture.
Okay. I pushed for 2 hours with Isaiah, which it was tiring, but I didn't feel pain because of the epidural. Now with Xavier, sorry guys, since I am using my phone, it's hard to film with it, and then I keep getting messages, and then it just died, so I don't have flash no more, so it might not look as clear as it was. So I'm going to try my best, but if I look at it and it looks too dark, then I'll just refilm. So, back to my story. Xavier, I was already 40 weeks pregnant. I was already 9 months. Stop, Isaiah. And it was my due date. So on the day of my due date, I had my doctor's appointment, and my doctor told me that he thought the baby was going to be really big, like Isaiah was. So he said he thought it would be best if they induced me. And I was so tired of being pregnant that of course I took it. So I told him yes, that I would like to be induced, thinking it would be within the next few days. He called the hospital and then called me back and then let me know that there was a slot in for that night, a spot open for that night, that if I wouldn't mind getting induced that night. So of course I was like yes. So on my exact due date, which was the 23rd of May, I went into the hospital and they had to, hey, calm down. They had to give me antibiotics before they induced me because I had an infection. So that wasn't too great. So I had antibiotics all night. Isaiah, please. And then the next day, like around, same thing, like at 3 p.m. Oh my gosh, 3 p.m. At 3 a.m. they finally put the medication in to induce me. That's all they got to. So they came in, they told me, oh honey, you're not even too dilated, you're gonna be here until maybe 6 p.m. He'll be born in the night. And it was barely like 6:30 a.m. So I was so like, oh great. I wasn't feeling pain. Of course I didn't have an epidural. Nothing. So this was at 6:30. They told me that it was gonna be late. At that time they switched nurses. A new nurse came in, introduced herself, all that great stuff. And then she told me that I was still not dilated, and they put my dosage up higher for the medication to induce me, or she said I might go another night without having him. So that was just terrifying to me. I couldn't stand the thought of staying pregnant longer, being in the hospital. I hate hospitals, being away from Isaiah. So I was just so eager. And then maybe at around 7:05, I started feeling horrible contractions. It felt so bad. I only had contractions with Isaiah for about 30 minutes, so I couldn't say I really remembered what they felt like. So I couldn't remember exactly what my contractions felt like. But I do know that they were a lot worse with Xavier. I think that might have been because of I was induced. So I told the nurse, I told my mom, I told Hector. I was like, I'm in horrible pain. It's feeling really bad. I feel like I'm gonna have this baby soon. The nurse was like, oh no. She checked me. I was already 4 centimeters dilated. So I went from 0 to 4 in about 20-25 minutes. And then the monitor that they put on your stomach to monitor the baby's heartbeat, I kept moving because I was in so much pain that I just wanted to stay sitting down. But you know, the monitor could read the baby's heart correctly. So I was laying down, and then I would sit down, and I guess the monitor would move. I don't know if the monitor was not working, but it wasn't reading the level of intensity of contractions that I was feeling. My nurse would come in and she's like, oh honey, you're not getting no contractions. Oh no. And she's telling me that I wasn't feeling anything because it wasn't reading on the monitor. Every time I had a contraction, I was already timing them. They were pretty close together, and I kept saying, it's so painful. I know I'm gonna have this baby. So finally she comes back in, she checks me again, and I'm already 5. So I went from a 4 to a 5 in about a minute, 2 minutes. She wasn't planning on coming back to check me until an hour. So remember, it was 7:05. She wouldn't have came back until 8:05, but I kept insisting, so she came back. She checked me and she told me I was ready for an epidural. Of course, I was like, okay, I want it. The guy that does epidural came in maybe 5 minutes later. So no, I'm so lying. He came in maybe 20-25 minutes later. 5 minutes after that, I got up to use a restroom because I felt like I had to use a restroom. And while I was in there, as soon as I got up, I felt like my water broke. But they were telling me that no, it wasn't my water. Okay, I guess it wasn't. So I went to the restroom, and I just had probably like 3 contractions from the time it took me to get up from the bed to go to the restroom. That means they're pretty close together. So I was still waiting for the epidural guy to come because he still hadn't came. I went back and sat down, and we were still waiting for him, and I was in so much pain. When he finally got there, it was about 20 minutes till 8. He started getting everything ready. You know, it's a process. He started getting his stuff ready. He told Hector and my mom to please step out, so they left. And okay, sorry guys, I had to get Xavier. So, oh my god, where was I? Oh, I think so. By the time that he got there and he got everything ready, to put in the epidural, I knew I was in so much pain. But the thought of I'm about to get an epidural and feel nothing felt so great that I was like, you know what, I'll take it. So I wasn't complaining as much. I was just hanging in there and holding the pain. He had me leaning over the bed, like, you know, when they make you like bend over and hug a pillow or whatever. He had me doing that for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. I don't know what he was doing. He didn't put anything in my back, but the point is that I was holding in all my contractions and all my pain for so long, for like 15 minutes, that I finally couldn't. I told him that he had to move and that I had to push. And him and the nurse were like, no honey, no, you're not ready to push, don't move, we could hurt you. But the needle wasn't in me, so that's why I was still moving. And I was telling them that I had to push and that I was gonna have the baby. Of course they were like, no, you're barely 4 centimeters, that's impossible, don't worry, we know what's best for you, you have to listen to us. And I was just, at that point I was already not screaming, but I was like, no, I'm in pain. I was yelling back at them, telling them that I knew what I was feeling and that I had to have the baby. So I turned around when they were both like, no, don't. I turned around, I had no epidural, no nothing. I just turned around and I started pushing. I guess they saw his head, because at that point they called my mom and Hector back in, and they called the doctor to tell him, and the nurse was like, can you wait 30 minutes? The doctor's on his way. I was not gonna wait no 30 minutes. So I started pushing, and like 5 minutes later I had Xavier. Yeah, he was no epidural, no nothing, because we didn't have time. I really thought it was gonna take long like they told me, but it went really quick. It was super, well, the contractions were super painful. Xavier was tiny. He wasn't as big as they thought he was gonna be. He was 6 pounds 15 ounces, so exactly 7 pounds. So he was really small, which is why it didn't hurt, I didn't tear, so it was so easy. But just the contractions were so painful. They were really painful with Xavier. They weren't as painful with Isaiah because of the fact that I had epidural. With Xavier I didn't, so it was painful. The birthing process, however, was way easier. I wouldn't have another baby with no epidural. If for some reason I would have another kid, I would try my best to get epidural because it was painful. The contractions were way painful, but the after is just amazing. I mean, I was walking like 30 to 40 minutes after Xavier was born. I was walking like normal. I was just normal, like, oh, the baby's out of me, let me just walk around. It was great. With Isaiah, I didn't walk until like the next day. I couldn't even use the restroom alone. The after was pretty painful and it took me longer to recuperate. With Xavier, I was good and so quickly. So in my experience, they both have their pros and cons. I wouldn't do it natural if I had the choice, because I didn't like the feeling of the contractions, which I'm not sure if it's because I got induced and that's why it was even more painful. But if I had to, I would definitely get epidural. It wasn't fun for me not having epidural. So the pros and cons for Isaiah's birth, the epidural birth. The pros are, obviously you don't feel any pain. I think that's the only pro. The cons are you feel after pain, you can't walk as quick, it takes you longer to recuperate, you don't feel anything, so it might take you longer to push because you feel like you're not even in labor. It's just like, what? I have to push the baby out? So those are the cons. The pros and cons with Xavier, once again, the only con is that it is extremely painful. The contractions are extremely painful if he's a small baby. If it's a big baby, I could only imagine how much you would feel, and oh no, that would be so bad. The pros are that you recuperate so quickly. It's such a smooth ride when you have a natural birth. You don't have no medication, your legs are not numb. Everything is just so great. I just didn't like it. I didn't like the pain. I know it sounds stupid, but I did not like the pain. So that was my experience. I would love to hear all of yours. So that's it for my story time. Like this video if you like it. If you don't, well, don't watch it. And subscribe to my channel.
I'm crying, Chan.
Bye, guys.
I'm crying, Chan.